absolutely. So what I was getting at earlier when we were talking was the fact that infertility disproportionately impacts Black women. I don't say women of color, I say Black women, because when you look at the data, which I spent a couple of years just looking at the data, it disproportionately impacts Black women. However, our clinics don't necessarily look like it disproportionately impacts Black women, which then makes you look at the next thing, which was the affordability of services to support you in your infertility, in your infertility journey. That comes with the layer that 70% of Black and Hispanic women oftentimes cannot afford those services. So price range when we went to our clinic, and again, it was a lengthy process for us. It was on July 1st of 2021 where I did my HSG exam, which confirmed that my tubes were completely blocked. Right. So you're laying on this table and it's like they're shooting dye through your tubes. And if the dye does not move, and I will say Dr. Haslett actually gave me my referral to go to the fertility clinic. I had came to her office. I had done my research. I said, look, doc, this is what I need from you. And she did. She ran through the questions that she needed to ask me. She asked me, were my periods regular? Yes. From the day that I got one in middle school, that girl comes like clockwork. My cycle never surprises me. She has never, it's very consistent. It has been that way since the 8th grade. Also asked me, a series of other questions. And then said, okay, here's your referral. And she did prep me that they're going to do some blood work. They're going to do blood work of your spouse. And then they're going to end it with like an HSG exam. And I think I'm getting that right. HSG, right? And she told me what it was. I do know that you cannot ask somebody, does it hurt? Because pain is different for everybody. But that exam took me, it took me out.
Ma'am,
it did not feel good.
My wallet was like, ooh,
yes. So it is a range. I will say that it is a range. It can be anywhere from like 21 to in the early 40,000. So there's a price for the process. There's a price for the medication. And to the point about infertility and who it disproportionately impacts and why that percentage is so high that Black and Hispanic women don't oftentimes pursue services such as IVF or IUI is because of the affordability of those services. I know my husband and we applied for tons of grants and we got none of them. But we didn't have much of a savings. We had what they tell you to have, right? Like have your bills for up to 3 months. We had that in the event that something happened, but we also weren't sitting on $50,000 to be able to pay for the process of IVF. So the diagnosis itself is disproportionate to Black women, but then the affordability of it is also, it's not, I'm not saying that as Black or African American folks, we don't have money, but to just have this one-off amount of money to be able to pay for this, it's rare to come across that. So it's tough.
I want to ask Dr. Haslett. Dr. Haslett, what are some of the, I guess I can use the word common, what are some of the common reproductive diseases that show up predominantly in African American women?
Okay, so the first one, the obvious one is PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian. PCOS syndrome. Traditionally, it was called PCOS. Sometimes they call it PCOD, polycystic ovarian disease. But what that basically is where a woman does not ovulate on a regular basis, but it's also a metabolic issue too, because it can have some components of having too much testosterone or being insulin resistant or having some early onset diabetes. So that's one of the main reasons, number one. Number two can be hypertension or diabetes. Number three can be a history of basically pelvic inflammatory disease, and to say it very bluntly, a sexually transmitted infection where your tubes get infected and they don't move like they're supposed to move. Sometimes a woman can also be allergic, which is very interesting, to the male sperm, and she'll make too thick of a mucus for the sperm to get through to the egg. Those are some of the common things. I will say it's important to once again go to your primary physician, your OB, or your basically your GYN, because they can order some of the early testing, and your insurance will pay for it.
Yeah.
But once you go to the infertility doctor, everything they may have gotten a little bit more savvy now, but for the most part, everything that they order or do for you, they're going to charge you for. Whereas I can order things under a certain diagnosis code, and your insurance may pay for it also.
Yeah, and to that point, I will say I did a lot of testing trying to figure out what. So when I was diagnosed in July of 21, we had about 6 months, 7 months before we actually said, okay, we're going to do this. We took some time to think about it. My husband was like, it's your choice because it's your body. It's your choice if you want to go through all of this. I remember my fertility clinic saying it's not a 100% chance. You just got to be full of hope. And when I looked at that price note, I said, I don't know if I can pay that much money for anything less than a 100% chance that it is going to work. That is an investment. I look at my daughter now and I'm like, girl, you better be the president because I made a major investment in you getting here. I still have the straw that she lived in the freezer. And sometimes I wave that little straw in her face. I'm like, don't you test me with me, young lady. But to that point, I did a series of testing and I went through a lot of questions. They asked me about my cycle. They asked me about something like acne when I was a teenager. They asked me about the history of the women in my family.
Yeah.
And to me, fact finding with my mom and my aunts, I actually found that, and I did a diagnostic test with my OB, and it determined that I had endometriosis. But because I never had a whole bunch of pain during my periods, I guess I just never complained about this situation. And that takes me back to when I said my marriage was being tested, because automatically you think things like STIs, right, going untreated is what causes you to struggle with infertility. And I'm looking at my husband like, well, you're the only man I've been intimate with.
Right.
I had a doctor who did not believe me when I said at the time I was a virgin. And then even when I got married, I said, well, my spouse is the only man that I have ever been intimate with. And yes, I got married at the age of 29, and he was the only man I had been intimate with. So
can we pause there?
My marriage was now being tested because now he's looking at me like, what? And I'm looking at you like, what? Mm-hmm. So it was tough. It's tough.
Absolutely. Because I remember, listen, Dr. Hazlitt hit it. Listen, I had about 5 of the things you listed. I was allergic to my husband. I have PCOS. Listen, I had cycles, but I had no idea that you can have a cycle and still not ovulate. I mean, I'm thinking, okay, this happening. I mean, I had a cycle for 2 years, and so you just, it seemed like it was going from bad to worse, right? Mm-hmm. And so, they did everything, flipped me upside down. I remember giving myself injections in the belly, took over 100 pills a month. And, I did all of these things and had the conversation. And like you, Joy, I began to say, okay, what's happening? And only to find out that every firstborn daughter on my mom's side deals with some form of infertility. Either they had one or none. And I'm like, and then that's when I'm pulling in my faith again. Like, okay, this is gonna stop right here. Like, okay, what do I have to do?
I went into my mom and my aunts. I went into the group chat and I said, which one of y'all? Because I know my mom's story. My mom wasn't taking birth control right. And my daddy looked at her, she got pregnant, right? But that's not true, because you do know it is still. Right. But I'm saying I wondered. I'm like, who was it? And I found out that my aunt, one of my mom's sisters, actually had endometriosis. However, when my aunt was diagnosed with it, she was in her mid-20s, I think. There was a procedure in which they went in and they cleaned her tubes out, and about 6 weeks later, she actually had conceived her child. I went back to my fertility doctor and I said, can you do that laparoscopic procedure on me? And then she said, because of your age, when we look at the data, when we look at the statistics, it shows that oftentimes as you're waiting for recovery, the tubes are scarring back up. So she said, we can try, then we can possibly do IUI. But she said, your success rate is higher with IVF. That was a whole nother conversation. So now my husband and I are like, do we want to put all of that stress on my body? Like, what do we want to do? And one of the hard parts for me is my husband kept saying, baby, it's your choice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, when we dated, we always talked about having a family. I wanted 4 kids, you know, at this point now, because of politics in America and because we don't know how things are going to work out. And that is important when you talk about reproductive and infertility care. I'm at this point, I'll be grateful for just one more shot. And, you know, but when people ask me that, that's triggering. When people say, do you want another one? I roll my eyes because I'm like, if it was that easy, sure, I would have had one yesterday. But although I have embryos in the freezer, there's still a transfer protocol that you have to go on. There's still injections, there's still medication, there's still those vaginal ultrasounds. It's still a transfer protocol
every other day
to be on for 3 weeks. And it was hard on my body when I was just 31, you know, so it's tough.
I see Dr. Haslett's hand because she's like, let me get in here. Ding, ding, ding. You're in, Doc.
So a couple of things. Endometriosis causes infertility not from endometriosis itself, but from the scar tissue that prevents your tubes from working appropriately. And that's called a laparoscopy. That's called a diagnostic laparoscopy and lysis of adhesions. So she's also correct that every time you go into the belly to take down scar tissue for whatever reason, you get more and more and more and more tissue. More and more and more scar tissue. You also have to remember that there are reasons for the different medications and different things. And you do have to, if your tubes are blocked, you're at risk for ectopic pregnancy, which could end up removing a tube and over you can bleed to death. That can be life-threatening. So if you get that far down the line, you have to say, you know, do I want to do IVF, in vitro fertilization, or IUI, intrauterine insemination, or do I want to go through all the tests and try and do it naturally? To do it naturally, you know, you have less of a chance if you haven't been able to, and it costs more, but the hormones are kind of wicked. But pregnancy hormones naturally are kind of wicked anyway. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that when you go to an infertility doctor, they do have a reason for what they're doing. It's a cost to it, but usually there's a reason. Try this or this or this or this because of this, that, and the other. The HSG, hysterosalpingogram, is where you shoot the dye in, and sometimes that can blow open your tubes, and they can spill open. Sometimes it can cause the tubes. Sometimes it can cause the tubes to spasm, and they're still not open. So the last thing I wanted to say, well, not the last thing, but you have to remember these numbers don't really add up. But 15% of infertility is the female problem. 15% is a woman's issue, and 15% can be unknown. So it's a 50-50 chance with a man and a woman. I know women always take it upon themselves. What's wrong with me? Oh, I can't do it. Oh, I can't. But you also have to get your husband or your partner evaluated because his sperm may not be motile. He may have a low sperm count. He may be wearing little Speedos and burn up his stuff. Who knows? Y'all may be having lots of personal intimacy time and spinning up all his sperm. Who knows? So it really is a partnership. And it's a lot of little things that come together just right to make a pregnancy. And people get pregnant all the time, but it is a miracle. It is really a true miracle when someone gets pregnant. Yes, it happens frequently, but it is every time a miracle.
I love that.
And to Dr. Haslett's point, I will say at my clinic, before we even got to the HSG, they did do a lot of testing on me and my husband. They weren't just going to test me. He had to go in and give just as much blood. He had to go in and give just as many samples. So they did a thorough testing. And once they ruled that nothing was showing up there, that's when they said, let's do HSG, because it is kind of invasive. Yeah. So they said, let's let that be the last thing that we do. From there, that's when I went back to my OB and I was like, can you help me figure out why? And it was a procedure in which they determined. It wasn't like they did a pap smear and determined it. No, it was a procedure where they determined this is what's happening.
Let me ask you this, Joy. I want to fast forward. I'm kind of just speed us ahead. What was that day like? I'm sure you remember I know I remember the day that you got the news you're pregnant.
Oh,
Tell us.
Unfortunately for me, it wasn't even just a day. It was I'll probably say it was a series of about 2 weeks. Actually, I'll say it was about a month where everything just came crashing down. But that particular day, at the time, I'm working for the governor of the state of Nevada. I'm his director of legislative and internal affairs. And I remember it was a really busy day at work. But I also remember feeling so hopeful on my way to my doctor's appointment. I was on the phone with my husband and I said, oh, they're probably just going to tell us the timing is off. Everything's going to be fine. I did not think anything of the fact that at such a young age, I would have a diagnosis like the one that I got. But it's July 1st. I go in for my exam. I still to this day I took a selfie and I was smiling in my gown and my little, I don't know, scrub cap, right? Is that the right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't think the worst was going to be said to me. I thought it was just going to be like, girl, your timing is off. Try it this day. Or I thought they could give me a pill that, and they would say, go do it right now. I thought all of that was going to be my story. But when the exam determined that the tubes were blocked, I remember the lady said it just so matter-of-factly. And then when she saw how sad I do understand, because I know sometimes I present in a way where I'm very to the point because it's my field, right? I do believe in my heart she presented that way because she probably delivers this message a lot of times in one day. So I don't think she was trying to slight me or be cold towards me, because to this day she's actually a really great friend. I'm almost best with my whole clinic. But she said it, and then when she saw my pain, her tone changed. Her demeanor changed. She said, let me try it again. She said, because maybe I could. Oh, she tried it one more time. And then I sat there and cried and she held my hand. And I probably sat there for about 30 or 40 minutes. And she sat there with me. And then she said, when you're ready to talk, call me. So I got in the car. I think when I was sitting in the car, that's when I called her. And that's when I wanted to discuss what that meant and what can be done. So that was July 1st, right? Mind you, just a couple of days before that, my younger brother and my sister-in-law had gotten married in LA, just a couple of days before that. Then July 1st comes my diagnosis. I go through my 31st birthday, July 12th. Then it's my mom's 50th birthday, July 22nd. Then August 1st comes around. And on August 1st, my younger cousin, who was only 25 at the time, he died. And then I will never forget, I had like this outer body experience, I guess, because at the time that I'm looking at my aunt cry and scream over his body, I'll never forget that my only response was to my husband, we'll never know what pain like that feels like. I'm stuck on just 1 month ago, I was told that I couldn't. I didn't have the money. I was told that I couldn't do it. So then let's go 9 days after that, my younger brother, who just got married a month ago, and my new sister-in-law tell my husband and I that they are pregnant.
Yeah.
And as happy as I was for them, it's almost as if it didn't come out the way my heart wanted it to come out. Like my heart didn't show really what I felt because I was so excited. But I'm also, and at the time they didn't know that I was diagnosed with it, but they didn't know. I didn't tell anyone. So I just didn't react the way deep down inside I was reacting. And it was hard for me to do so. It was hard for me to show up for him throughout her pregnancy. And it was hard for me to be there for the needs that she had because I didn't know how. And they didn't know how to give me that grace because they had no idea what you were doing. We say it all the time. Be kind to people. You never know what they're dealing with. We say it, but we probably don't live it the way we should. And I don't hold any of this against. It's not their fault. I'm just calling out in memory how everything went. That they probably didn't know to extend to me that grace because they didn't know what Joy was dealing with. They had no idea.
So that takes me to my question, Joy. So like, number one, that I'm sure you felt those emotions throughout until transfer, right? And then until you was like, oh, you're pregnant. What made you be so loud about your story? Because a lot of women suffer or deal with this. A lot of families do in silence because of shame. What made you be so loud? Like what made you say, I'm going to share this story?
Yeah, I kept my mouth shut about it until the second trimester. The pregnancy, IVF, I kept my mouth shut about it. So nobody knew about Joy was pregnant or this is how she got pregnant until July 12th of 22. So not even my brothers. I told them I was pregnant before I told Instagram, but I did not tell them the route in which I had to become a mother. So what made me want to talk about it, and I'll say this, from sharing that we were pregnant over the series of the entire pregnancy, I shared reels or videos of the entire process that we went through from the day of the diagnosis all the way up till like I finally got the green light to start the process and all the pills, the price note. Like I remember I showed the refrigerator, and at one point our fridge had more fertility medicine in it than food because some of that stuff has to go in the fridge. So I shared all of that. The reason why I chose to do so is because I went through this process feeling extremely alone. Every time I walked into my fertility clinic and I saw another non-Black woman, I felt alone. Every time I looked at the financial sacrifices that we were making to be able to pay for this, I felt like I was by myself. I say this and I pray that you all understand where I'm coming from, but I literally went through life assuming that once I got pregnant, I probably would have a miscarriage. The only reason why I assume that, though, is because people talk about infant loss. They talk about it. I never assumed infertility because I didn't hear people talking about, infertility. So I didn't know that it was a thing that I would be experiencing. I didn't know that it was a story that God was going to give to me. But the more I think about it, he knew that I would give him the glory. So he said, I'm going to give this to my girl.
Right.
And I don't like, I'm not saying he picked me to go through pain. What I'm saying is
he picked me, child.
Glory. And he knows who is going to make sure he gets the glory.
Absolutely.
The glory for my baby to this day. But that's what made me share it. It just wasn't talked about. And I refused. I knew my fertility specialist said, Joy, you're not going to be the last woman who deals with this. And she said that, and it kept repeating in my ear. And I said, I refuse to let the next woman feels like she's by herself in this. The funny thing is, when I started talking about it, women that I knew started telling me their experiences. Now, some people had the definition wrong of infertility. Some women had a difficulty conceiving, and some women needed IVF to conceive, and the two are different. So some women started sharing their story. There was a few women that I actually spoke with, again, that I knew that shared that they had to do IUI or they had to do IVF, or, hey, my baby was, through surrogacy. And because I grew up with their child, I didn't know. And my question to them was always, well, what made you not talk about it?
Right.
And they said, oh, it wasn't a big deal. Oh, it's not really what we talked about. Or, what was I going to say about it? And I think I truly believe that if more women spoke about it, maybe I wouldn't have been so depressed. Maybe, and I say maybe, but maybe I wouldn't have been so depressed. Maybe I wouldn't have felt so embarrassed. Maybe I could have leaned on other women when my marriage was being tested during this time. Maybe I would have found more resources and support financially and emotionally going through this. So that's why I choose to be extremely loud about it, because if it's going to disproportionately impact women who look like me, well, we're going to band together, and I'm going to support the next woman through it.
Listen, babe, you can put a pin right there. You have child. Listen, I'm trying not to cry because
I cry.
Because when you're in it, it's not like everybody's raising their hand and saying, I know what it's like. And so you do kind of walk through this life or this moment feeling like I'm the only one, right? And so that was one of the reasons why I established the project, because I didn't want anyone else to feel, to experience. I wanted it to be a place like this where you can come and somebody can tell their story and you can say, ooh, I'm not by myself, right? Because that matters when you're in those waiting periods, man. You got to wait a whole week to find out this, and you have to wait a whole week. What do I do? I'm going crazy here. Or, the fact that my marriage is experiencing some difficulties. It's not comfortable. I don't know how this is going to end. And so I decided, nope, I'm going to be loud. I am going to be loud. I am going to share. But I'm so grateful for Dr. Hazlitt, because so many times they'll ask, well, what should I ask when I go to my doctor? I think this is what's happening. And it was like, wow, maybe let me ask the question for you. And so I remember sometimes going to my appointments and saying to my doc, hey, I know it's not me, but do you mind? What should I tell them? And so I had this group of women, and I'm saying, okay, the first thing you need to do when you get to your doctor is do X, Y, and Z, And so at that, I started kind of feeling like, okay, maybe you have something here. And after going through those 12 years, I mean, Joy, I take my hat off to you, honey. Yes, baby, because by year 6, I mean, I had experienced the miscarriage by year 10. I think you had shared something that you didn't know, or it's not that you didn't want to be happy, but it came from a different kind of place. I remember in the middle of a miscarriage, I'm sitting Jesus, I'm sitting on the toilet, and my phone rings, and my godson's mom's like, oh, we're gonna be pregnant together, and I'm just bleeding, and I'm just like, I couldn't even breathe, right? And I'm thinking, okay, this will be over. And I'm thinking, I never had a miscarriage before. And I get up, and I'm thinking I'm healing. Okay, we're me and my husband, we're getting through it. And we've learned to laugh through everything. And I go to the restroom again a couple of days later. I'm thinking the miscarriage is over, but I passed the baby into the toilet, and I'm freaking out, because for so many years I've had this image of what my baby's gonna look like. And so I'm standing there like, although it's little, I just want to know, did it have my eyes? Did it have Mike's nose? And I'm feeling it all in this bathroom. And I'm saying, God, where are you? Like, what is happening? What did I do? What? But then in that same bathroom, it's a mess in there. In that same space, it dawned on me, change your perspective, because they told you would never, but something is working now that never worked before. And so although it's not ending the way you think, this is just the beginning. And I remember getting in that shower, and I remember crying and screaming for every woman that I knew that didn't have a voice. I remember crying, and my tears was mixed with the shower water. And I'm saying, I got to get this out. Like, I'm just screaming in the shower. But I remember getting out of that shower and getting on the phone with the advice nurse. And I'm saying, I know it looks a mess, and I'm calling you about a miscarriage, but something just happened. Something just turned on in my body that didn't turn on 10 years ago. How long is it going to take for me to recover from this? And what do I have to do now? And I think that was just that moment saying, okay, yeah, I didn't want this chapter of the story, but I'm glad I got it. That's right, baby. I'm glad I got it, right? And so I knew then that if I just keep believing, I knew then. I just started seeing God's hand. Just it's going to happen, and it happened. Even though we did the injections and the pills and all of the things, and I think I finally had my daughter, and baby, that's music to our ears, honey.
Yeah,
that don't bother me at all.
No.
Listen, I tell people, faith has a sound. When you've been believing God for a baby, and I hear these babies, that's somebody's prayer. And so I got pregnant, had my daughter and she was probably about 1.5, 2, was about 2, Erica. And I'm sitting at dinner anniversary, and I'm just like so over it. My husband's like, are you enjoying your food? And I'm like, yeah, just get me home. I feel horrible. Long story short, he takes me to the emergency room because I get sick. Well, guess what? I'm pregnant again, this time with no infertility drugs. I didn't even pray for this little baby. I was like, what? The doctor's like, yeah, you're going to go to the emergency. You're going to go to the OR, but not tonight. You're pregnant. I'm like, can't be, ma'am. It took me 12 years. It took me 12 years to get here. And she was like, well, you're pregnant now. And I share that story still knowing that not everyone's story is going to end up like mine. We share our stories knowing that, hey, sis, that might not be your conclusion. So for those that, because Dr. Haslett mentioned, and I thought about that the other day, that unknown fertility, what do you say then? You know, some people ask us, you know, well, what do you think? I wish I could tell you that. I wish I could promise you a happy ending. I wish I could, but what I can do is hold your hand through the process. What I can do is to equip you, you know, with some encouragement, some support, and even guide you back to your physician, and even guide you on your knees, that faith would happen for you. So as we lead up to Mother's Day, what give Dr. Haslett and Joy, what would you share with women and families and their support teams they're waiting again this Mother's Day? What would you share with them?
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you gonna
go? And you can go first.
From any angle. I'm sorry. I know that was a lot.
So I would tell patients who are in that holding position or in that waiting position, have patience and have grace. Right? Sometimes all you can do is what you can do, and then you have to leave it in the hands of God. And sometimes that's not an easy place to be or a happy place to be, but it is to be his child. And that's what you have to kind of lean on. And we are all mothers somewhere. You're somebody's mother, a mother's support, a mother's love, a mother's guidance. And we all have that role somewhere for somebody.
Yeah. I like that.
To support systems, because you said, what would you say to women and to their support? So to support systems as we approach Mother's Day, I would just say celebrate, right? Celebrate the mothers and the women around you. In your celebration, have some compassion or some sympathy and some empathy to the women who are waiting to be mothers, to the woman who probably acts different around Mother's Day but has not told you why, to the woman who shies away from the baby shower or the talk about motherhood and she still hasn't told you why. Give her some grace. Create space for her. The more you do that, she'll come to you. She'll talk to you. She'll help her navigate what she's going through. And then to the woman, I say, find the boldness to tell your story, whether you're waiting, whether you're going through it, whether you had a failed IVF or IUI cycle. Find the boldness to tell your story. And the reason why I say that, I am a policy professional and I know firsthand that nothing is going to be done about it if nobody thinks the policy is going to impact anybody. So if enough of us are talking about it, then we could change the mindset of payers and providers. If enough people are talking about it, we can change the way elected officials are making policy in regard to our reproductive rights and freedom. So I yes, waited until I was in the second trimester to tell my story. But I am very encouraged by the amount of women who have come to me and said, can we talk? Your story is my story. Can you help me share my story? Can you connect me with somebody so that I can amplify this message? We have to find, and it does come with a level of boldness. It does come with courage, because the moment you talk about it, everybody is just going to, not everybody, a lot of folks gonna turn their noses up at you. A lot of folks gonna say, well, that's no excuse as to why X, Y, and Z. A lot of people are going to come at you with a defeated attitude. But the more you talk about it, we can teach people the questions that they should and should not ask us. We can demand that there is a change in policy. We can demand that our place in the healthcare system is more taken up. We can make a demand for so much more if we come together and if we talk about it. I pray for you women that are out there, and I pray that you tell your story, because we need it. We need it to be told on Capitol Hill, in your state legislature, at the commission, in the local. It needs to be told. Even if you take 5 women and go for coffee and y'all sit in Starbucks, who helps pay for IVF if you're a full-time employee. Even if you go and you sit at Starbucks and you drink your matcha, talk about it and let people hear you talking about it, so that we can change the narrative that we do not need to hide behind closed doors because I didn't get to sleep with my spouse and become pregnant, right? It's okay. It hurts. It hurts, but it's okay. And I also and I do this for myself. I start every single morning with gratitude, and I encourage women out there to look yourself. If you have to go through IVF, if you have to go through IUI, I ask every morning that you look at the mirror and you say, I'm so grateful that at least it exists. Because maybe 50 years ago, women had to go without becoming mothers, right? So it sucks that we have to go through it. I'm never going to not say that. But I do. Every morning I wake up and I say, you know, God, I'm so grateful that I live at a time that advancement of medicine is a thing, so that I can become a mother.
Joy, that is amazing. So thank you. I thank you for your boldness. I thank you for telling your story. That if you know anything about the Duchess Project, you know that is the very reason why we exist.
That's our heartbeat.
Need to be told, yes, and women need to know, and families need to know, husbands and wives and partners alike, that you are not alone in this process. So it wouldn't be a Life with Lizzie if we didn't have you close out. I want you to pray. I want you to pray for families that are waiting, families that may not be hopeless. Because see, some people are believing God for the money to be able to. I mean, there's a multi-level, multi-layered process, and so, or even families that are in the denial that this can't be us. We look at Joyce, said she was a virgin until she got married. That girl did everything right. And they're like, okay, God, we did it your way. We tried marriage and we still here. So I just want you to be able, so that we can encourage some people today, encourage some families, encourage women who probably don't want to see a Mother's Day card, even in the aisles at Target. You know, that just to keep the faith and to keep their hope alive for this process that they're about to embark in, or that they're already in. So we're going to ask you to close us out with prayer tonight.
Absolutely.
Can I say one thing? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I also wanted to add to the conversation, getting to a baby does not fix it, right? Just because I have my baby, it does not mean that I'm not still struggling with this idea of infertility and the way, because I haven't yet just conceived a child, you know, through intercourse. So I'm still in that period of, I got my embryos in the freezer that I'm still paying rent on every year. So I also just ask that in your prayer, maybe this is very self-serving, that you just, you know, you cast the net over those of us who thought getting to a baby would fix it.
Right.
Because it doesn't fix it.
Joy, that's a whole nother other conversation. And I would love for you to come back, because that's a conversation. I would love for you to come back. You too, Dr. Hazlitt. Listen, I have so many ideas that are happening in my head and in my brain right now. You guys, can I be honest? I had pretty much put the project to sleep because it was so emotional. Because it's not like, you know, this nonprofit was like, oh, we're gonna sell cupcakes. No, this touched my soul. right? I walked this out, and I had women that just wanted to know. They had questions that I just didn't have answers to. I don't know what to tell you, and just me as a person, I don't like, pain is pain, but it's like you just kind of want to rescue everybody, and I couldn't. And this was the project was a lot. We even have another component to the Duchess project called the Royal Behavior Academy, where we actually mentor at risk youth who are in foster care systems, right? Because I was trying to veer away, but somehow I keep coming back to the heart of the Duchess project, which is this kind of conversation. So I just want to say I am so grateful for your yes, Joy. I'm so grateful for your yes, Dr. Hazlitt, just to have the conversation. I'm sure there are so many that you have helped with this conversation. And I mean, I'm going to split this thing up and to just be as loud as I can be, because this right here, I wish I would have had this conversation when I was walking through. My daughter's 11 now, right? So I'm so grateful for you guys. Erica, you did your thing as our admin. I thank you. And so we're going to go ahead and pray. I'm going to invite you guys all to join us and to go find us at the Duchess Project and like us, and that you may be able to follow us to get more encouragement, to get that awareness, to get that support, to get that education. As I mentioned, there is a book that I have penned, and I tell my story in this book. It's called And Then Faith Happened. You can go to elizabethhudson.com and purchase that book. You can also go to Amazon because it is there. And that's that. But let us pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, I thank you for my sisters. I thank you for my friends. I thank you for my family. And I thank you for those that support them. God, as we get ready to embark upon Mother's Day, I pray for peace now in the name of Jesus. I pray now, God, that you would touch the hearts of men and women, God, as they wait, God, as they consider, God, as they move towards that. This Mother's Day might not be that Mother's Day, but God, would you give them peace? God, I ask that you would shelter, that you would cover their hearts, God, that you would cover their emotions now, God, in the name of Jesus. Father, I pray now, God, for every doctor that works with patients that are struggling or facing infertility, God, that you would give them, God, the words to say, the compassion, God. I thank you for them now. Those that take their patients home, God, I pray that you would bless them indeed, God. I pray now, God, for those, God, that are in the middle of IVF and they're not sure if it's going to happen, if it's going to work. God, may you give them peace. And those, God, that are unsure and the doctors don't know what to say and they don't know what to do, God, may you give them peace. God, may this Mother's Day, God, be one of joy. God, may this way be one of celebration and love. God, cover them, God, cover their mental space, God, cover their hearts, God, and even those that support, God, may they have discernment, God, may they have an understanding, God, of what is going on with the ones that they support and that they cover. Father, I even now ask, God, that you would do miracles this weekend, God, that someone would conceive, God, because of this weekend. Father, you can do anything but fail. And so we bless you today. We bless you tonight. We give your name glory and praise, and we'll be careful to come back and give you the praise when the testimonies come in. We ask these things in Jesus' name. I want to thank you guys. Do me a favor. Listen, like it, share it multiple times. Invite someone. You can even do this. I would recommend that you would even share this in their messenger. You may not want to share it in public for all to see. Send them a message. Send them the link, because I believe something that was said during this conversation is going to help somebody get through another's Mother's Day. Well, that's all I got this time, guys. But you know what I say every week. I holla. Bye. Come on, y'all.
Watch this. So this happened actually in the kitchen of my little 2-bedroom basement apartment. I was hot stuff with a 2-bedroom basement apartment. I was hot stuff. I wish I could go back to that price right now.
Yeah, right. How much was that rent?
$500. When they raised it up to $550, I almost had a heart attack. Woo!
Yeah. So our first kitchen, our first rent was $500, and he said in that $500 kitchen, in that 2-bedroom basement apartment, it really wasn't even like supposed to be an apartment. It was supposed to be a basement, but you know, janky promoters, janky managers, they created our space for him. But I treated that 2-bedroom basement apartment like it was our current home today. I tried to make it a home, but nevertheless, he said that I said if he married me, he would never have to cook again. I don't think I said that because I'd already got him. I'd already snapped him